We've just taken a step back and been like, what really matters to brands? What really matters to agencies, which is, inadvertently what matters to their brands. And we've said, here are all the metrics that you can slice and dice. It's going to be different for every company, but that's why you need to be trained in the same way that Goldman Sachs is trained to understand financial markets, as now you need to be trained to understand consumer markets when it comes to social media.
Welcome to the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. Each episode shares transformative insights and advice from members of Forbes Councils, a group of invitation-only communities for successful executives and entrepreneurs. This is Inside Forbes Councils.
All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. I'm your producer, Steven Ganoza. These days, everyone can be a celebrity on social media. Instagram in particular gives everyone the thrill of putting their life on display. And those with the most followers, the most engagement, the most influence can leverage those metrics to score big deals with brands. But what happens when those incentives lead an influencer to inflate their metrics? How can brands know what they're actually paying for? Enter a company like Dovetail, which seeks to bring transparency to the social influencer space, spot fake followers, and help brands to not overpay for those grams.
So my name is Mike Schmidt. I'm the founder of an internet company called Dovetail.com. And what we do is we help brands and agencies better action the data that's on social media to make informed decisions around influencer marketing, competitive intelligence, and then kind of more specifically anything that's happening across their branded channels and then their competitor channels.
At a high level, what is social influencer marketing?
I think that everyone has like their own sort of definition of what influencer marketing is or what a social media influencer is. A lot of people like to say, if you have a lot of followers on social media, then you have a lot of influence on social media. So the way that we characterize influence from a programmatic standpoint is they must have more than 5,000 followers and, sort of a highly engaged audience on social media. But technically the definition of influencer marketing or a social media influencer is anyone that can influence someone else's decisions through a social media channel. So I could have one follower, but if that one follower is buying tons of products based on my recommendations, then, I'm a social media influencer.
What metrics do you look at beyond just followers to determine how much influence a person has?
It's sort of a great question, and it's sort of rooted in the way that we have built the Dovetail platform. We've kind of taken the sort of mindset that we're building almost the Bloomberg terminal for social media, and our clients are like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or a big investment bank using the data that we're sending to them to make actionable decisions. So, some of the key metrics that we look at are the number of followers, the number of people that follow them, and then, the number of people that they're following, sort of that ratio. That's sort of a preliminary metric. We look at the engagement rate. So like how much likes and comments do they get on an average photo compared to their following. We look at the number of sponsored content in their feed. So are they constantly doing marketing for other brands? This is sort of like the saturation points, if you can kind of see it that way. We also look at like a time series of their following and the activity that's happened over time. So for example, a lot of people think that detecting spikes in activity on their following is one of the things where you can identify like fraudulent audience. And it's not really the telltale sign of fraud, because if, for example, an influencer friend of mine was featured in BuzzFeed article and saying, here are the top 5 people to follow on Instagram, that person is going to get a ton more followers because of BuzzFeed, right? So that spike is going to be pretty high in the number of net new followers. And similarly, so this happens across other like more negative things. PewDiePie, when he's sort of speaking about topics he probably shouldn't be speaking about on YouTube, he's going to lose a bunch of followers, and that's going to look like a massive decline. So long-winded way of saying there's a ton of metrics. We into each one of these metrics, male and female percentage, the locations at which their audiences are engaging from, the geotags that they're using, the hashtags they're using, what sort of cross-relationals are they having to each different thing. All of those metrics are equally important to determine success for a specific brand. Every brand is sort of different. I can certainly go into those much deeper. We look at hundreds of metrics across these profiles, which has kept us very competitive in the, call it, influencer platform ecosystem, even though that's not really how we sort of see ourselves.
Tell me, what's at stake here? What kind of dollars are we talking about? What's incentivizing people to pursue these strategies to fake their followers or their metrics?
Sure. So It's a great like sort of fundamental question that I think that like we were, probably one of the first platforms to really tell the world that there is a bunch of fraud happening on places like Instagram. And there's obviously platforms that have done this in the past and to a certain degree, but we've just been like, this is a thing, and this is why it matters. I think the economic reason to this problem in the ecosystem is just because of how much opportunity there is. So, for example, when big CPG companies are paying influencers based on their following and not necessarily the quality of those followers, it just incentivizes the market, the supply side, which is the influencers, to purchase followers. Because if that's the only metric that they're being verified on, why not just buy those followers? It costs you a couple $100 and you're going to get thousands of dollars from brands to promote their content. So it's purely unit economics. And you can take the more narcissistic, egotistic reason as well, which is if I have a bunch of followers online, that means I'm popular, and therefore it sort of self-propagates. It's sort of an organic uplift, if you will. So it's like if I have a bunch more followers than my friends, I look way more legit. I can pick up a DSLR. I know how to take great pictures. I travel once in a while. I can use that content over a course of history, and then I look like a social media influencer. So that's why we've just taken a step back and been like, what really matters to brands? What really matters to agencies, which is inadvertently what matters to their brands. And we've said, here are all the metrics that you can slice and dice. It's going to be different for every company, but that's why you need to be trained in the same way that Goldman Sachs is trained to understand financial markets, as now you need to be trained to understand consumer markets when it comes to social media.
Okay, well, while you brainstorm your next Instagram post, we're going to take a little break.
Are you a successful executive or entrepreneur with insights to share? Learn more about our invitation-only communities at ForbesCouncils.com. Forbes Councils members have the opportunity to collaborate with fellow business leaders to overcome challenges and create new opportunities. Members also have access to support benefits that help them save time and money, and a platform, Community Voice, on Forbes.com, through which they can amplify their voices and exchange ideas. See if you qualify at ForbesCouncils.com.
Brands ultimately want to sell to consumers, right?
Yep.
So if you're not the brand and you're not the social influencer and you're just, the Instagram user, the casual Instagram user, do you care about any of this?
That's a great question. I think my team asks ourselves all the time. Brands certainly care, like you said. They care as a primary motive. Are they wasting their money on these things? Am I engaging with a social media influencer that's got 70% fake followers and they've just sort of been gaming the system for a really long time, even if they have or haven't, or intentionally have or intentionally haven't? My, again, long-winded answer around, I don't think that people actually care until the brands sort of bring it up to them, or until the agencies bring it up to them and say, hey, what happened during this period where we've identified this sort of like smudge on your record that says you've done something interesting here, maybe fraudulent, maybe not, but we want to question you about it. And that's sort of what we're trying to do, is add that transparency layer to say, hey, brands, agencies, you have the money, you're forcing the market. This is something that's good for all of us, but we need you to be well informed.
So given everything you've learned about the metrics and spotting fraud from building Dovetail, if you're somebody who wants to become a social media influencer or a big Instagrammer, right, on the other side of this, what's the best way to, or what tips or metrics should you focus on to be successful in an honest way?
Yeah, I think being an influencer or being a social media star or creator, or sort of however you want to sort of bucket this, I mean, it really depends on what type of social media influencer you want to be. If you want to be like this purist social media influencer that, like a travel blogger or something like that, everyone's like, yeah, I need to focus on producing really great content, all this kind of stuff. But I think that ultimately it's all about creating an incredible narrative and something that's unique. Just posting pictures of your vacation or using a really high quality camera, it doesn't seem to be enough right now. And I know that might be contrary to how a lot of people think about this space, but just personally, I've seen personalities like Ninja that are coming out of the woodwork being like, blue hair, really fun, really great at Fortnite, working with really cool companies that we work with. And it's like, there's a certain uniqueness to that, right? And it's not just like, I think you can do sort of the same thing, similar things to everyone else in fashion or cosmetics or retail. Even those spaces are becoming so commoditized on the supply side, which is just the number of influencers that are doing pretty much the same stuff. There's actually this funny, I think this girl lives in Brooklyn. Her name's Low Cheekbones, and she creates these like hilarious videos. She grew really quickly. They're all kind of like parody influencer. I don't even know how to describe it. She's hilarious, but I don't know her. We don't really work with her, but I just have seen it from onset. And I've also seen like just really cool creative stuff that people are creating and these narratives around it, and they stick to these stories. So if you want to be like a social media influencer, my recommendation is think about something unique and something that a lot of people are going to like, and then try to find those communities on social media, maybe engage with their content, comment on their stuff. It's pretty much just a hustle. You're not going to get the sort of like viral growth that you were to get on, Vine or Instagram when it first came out. Now you got to really work for it, unless you get lucky and, you get some PR on BuzzFeed or something like that. But that's really hard and sometimes very expensive to do.
And don't buy followers.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't buy followers either. I think that's kind of it's kind of like I said, a smudge on your record.
Your product, Dovetail, you mentioned before, was sort of like a Bloomberg terminal for social media metrics in the same way that Bloomberg analyzes financial metrics. So let's talk a little bit more about how your product works. What are the data streams that you're looking at, followers, engagement? Where are you getting that data? What does Dovetail do with that data? And at the end of the day, what value are you providing to marketers?
So we capture, data from platforms, like you said, like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and, blogger pages and different things like that. There's a lot of confusion around how the platforms think about partnerships with companies like mine. Pinterest actually recently just opened up a partnership with influencer platforms that allows them to share specific data for qualifying different influencers. We use a combination of bunch of different things that adhere, with different standards and different user experiences. We try to be on the customer side. So we're saying, hey, what are the most important metrics that you want in order to make decisions? And we just try to like economically and ethically find the right metrics that are relevant to them. One of the coolest features on Dovetail is the ability to invite influencers into your own kind of network and get them to permission data for you. So if I wanted access, for example, to your Instagram stories, I would say, hey, Steve, can I have access to your Instagram stories data? If you say yes, that permission wall is sort of left and I get access to your Instagram stories data, which is a direct feed from Facebook and Instagram that allows me to report on my end the quality of my advertorial campaign. So that's kind of like how we think about it. It's like permissioned access. It's all about transparency, and then sort of those metrics I told you before, which are like followers and following and likes and comments and stuff. Those are all publicly available.
So can you define the end benefit to your clients, or maybe share a success story that illustrates this?
When I sort of think about what the value is to the companies that use Dovetail or successful use cases, I think it's just getting a 10x smarter about their decisions, because I think we've made a company that is clearly on a trajectory. We have over 500 customers that are using the platform now, and we have been in market for about a year or so. So there's clearly a lot of appetite for getting more data. So it's like sort of that 10x experience is what I used before, pretty good, but not as much data as I could get. Dovetail maybe a little bit more affordable, but has a little bit more data. We don't really talk about campaigns or those types of things because they're all so unique from company to company and customer to customer. But our customers are listed on our customers page, dovetail.com/customers. And we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, like Samsung and Beats and Starbucks, and these companies that are pulling off, you might have heard of user-generated content. I think they're kind of coming to this like term, it's influencer-generated content. So not just generally users, but people that have some sort of influence. So it's almost like these regular campaigns that they're producing. And you can kind of see these on social media today. Search any of the brands that we work with on our customers page, and you'll just see troves of influencer content that's being posted on places like Instagram or YouTube. And how we help those companies is we report on those in the same way that we've sort of built this Bloomberg terminal. It's Google search for people. You also get the benefit of having sort of the Google Analytics for this space as well. So that's our reporting section where you can track the success of certain campaigns. And it's sort of just like the convenience of having it in one place is where people are like, you know what, I'm ready to convert over from my existing solution, or I'm ready to get smarter about how I'm doing this because it's just a focused channel. I'm advertising on YouTube. Why don't I just do influencer marketing as well? Which is a subset of YouTube, but it requires, some person to sort of lead those relationships.
So bringing it back to the overarching theme of fraud, is there anything that can be done by the platforms themselves or through legislation to solve this? Or is it just a matter of brands getting wiser about fraud? Where do you see the solution for this?
This is like the holy grail of this industry. It's a very complex solution required, I think. We're sort of step one in identification, and then you're sort of saying, like, what's next? Like, what happens? How do these solutions get fixed? Ultimately, I think, you're right. The platforms themselves will start to become more involved with fixing these things. And I think that for us, we've always kind of had our door open, being like, if, representatives from YouTube or Instagram or Facebook want to come in and say, hey, what did you learn and how did you learn it? We're certainly open to those things. I think that is the most important thing that you can do, because on the other side of this, the people that are creating the bot farms and fake followers and all this other stuff, like, there is someone reciprocating. Those people are just entrepreneurs themselves. They see opportunity, they're selling it to the market that wants fake followers. And all we're doing is pushing them out and saying, if you do this thing, we're going to know about it because we have just so much data coming in. So I think that half of its education comes back all the way to one of your first points, where it's like, do people care? Do people know what's going to happen in the future? I think for us, we have to just tell the world that, keep preaching, basically. Keep telling people, hey, this is happening. Try not to do it. If you do it, just know the risks. It could, maybe it could benefit you. Who knows what you're trying to do? Maybe you're creating like some sort of content around fake following in the first place, and that could blow up into a Netflix special. Who knows? The thing that's really cool about it, though, is that I think that I've never seen it, so I don't have any like sort of privy knowledge to this, but the platforms themselves must be working on solutions around this. We see this through the data as well. When there's, like I said, Twitter purges or Instagram purges, ultimately that's just going to be like, how can we collaborate with those companies? How can they move forward individually? And then, what are the sort of right ways forward? But I don't think it's like a 0 to 1. I think it's like a 0 to 0.1, 0.1 to 0.2, 0.2 to 0.3. It's going to be a very sort of gradual incline, because you have to be so certain that someone is doing this in order to remove them from a social network or to pull them out. So,
all right, Mike, how can people find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, so it's just on dovetail.com. Dovetail is spelled Dovetale. You can read about our company if you just search Dovetail in the news. Just search Dovetail. We're featured in the New York Times. We're actually featured on Forbes a couple times, The Verge. You can read all about some of the work we do with fake followers and bot detection in the New York Times. It's probably the best sort of roundup. We invited them in to understand more about how we do this stuff. And then also follow us on Twitter. We talk about this stuff all the time. So it's just at Dovetail on Twitter, or I'm at Mike Schmidt on Twitter as well.
Thanks, Mike. This was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, it was fun.
And that will do it for today. But while we're on the topic, follow me on Instagram at Steven Ganoza. I could use the help with my metrics. See you on the next episode.
This has been Inside Forbes Councils. Please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're a member of the Forbes Councils and would like to participate in our podcast series, please email your member concierge. If you're interested in joining a Forbes Council, learn more at forbescouncils.com.